As always, I am very glad to be here today and very open to having the opportunity to have a conversation today with Kai Shanti. And what I love about these conversations is even though there's somewhat of an idea about what the topic will be, there's this openness to it really flowing however it does. So I'm very glad to be here with you today.
I'm glad to be here with you too again, Jeff. It's been
Yeah,
wonderful having these conversations once a month.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Kind of a nice little respite. Is that the right word? A little
Yeah,
break from
yeah.
my normal
And it's
routine.
interesting because there's an aspect I sense of kind of quote unquote catching up a little bit. And I know we always visit a little bit before, but what I also find is that the actual recorded conversation ends up being even more of a catch up, so to speak, if that makes
It
sense.
does. That's very true. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, very good. I think today, if I understand correctly, and I'm very excited to learn more from you about this. You are going. I'm sorry, not were. You are going to be speaking about Shaktipat, and so I just wanted to turn it over. I would love to hear anything that you'd like to share about that.
Okay, great. Yes, that was the topic that came up for me when I asked last month. And I talk about Shaktipat a lot because I give a version of Shaktipat. So I say a version of because I'm not specifically doing it in the traditional way that a lot of gurus give Shaktipat, but I found actually that everybody does it in their own way. The more people not that I've necessarily had Shaktipat from, but a lot of people that come to me go to a lot of other people, and
Yeah,
they're kind of Shaktipat junkies. And so I, I get to hear about all
I
the
love
different
it.
ways, all the different ways that people are doing it. But from the tradition that I'm from, it's a yogic tradition, and it's the awakening of the Kundalini energy by a guru or by an enlightened being was the tradition that I came from. So the guru that awakened my Kundalini gave me Shaktipat. He had several gurus actually, but the ones that and I love them all, and I've been with all of them astrally. But the ones that have really stayed with me and are still working with me were Baba Muktananda and his guru, Nityananda. So they are still with me and they're always present with me and they're always working with me. So that's been amazing. I'm actually going to read his definition of Shaktipat from his book.
Yeah, I love that. Now, this you're speaking of Swami Muktananda.
Yeah, so his book is Play of Consciousness.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I
I
mean,
actually I've wanted to read that, and I'm so glad you mentioned it.
you
Yeah.
haven't read it?
Actually, I haven't. It's been one of those things that it's been in my consciousness, so to speak. I've had people speak about it before, and it is one that for whatever reason, but I get a sense that that time may be now.
The time might be now. I love
Yeah,
the book. I absolutely love it. And it's like you don't have to resonate with everything that's said in the book because there's a lot of things about the guru that a lot of people don't resonate these days, and maybe just Indian culture from that time period in general. But the general awakening of the Shakti and the Kundalini and the way he describes his experience is so valuable to me. I just think that anyone who's interested in that process of Kundalini awakening should read this book because it is just one of those books that besides the fact that you're getting the blessings as you're reading it. So it's like you're getting an initiation while you're reading the book. So his version of his definition of Shakti is the divine mother, the dynamic aspect of Supreme Shiva, and the creative force of the universe, all pervasive divine spiritual energy. So also known as Chitti or Kundalini. So he also refers to it as Chitti Shakti.
hmm.
When he had his final enlightenment moment, he saw everything as sparkling Chitti Shakti, like everywhere he looked was just sparkling consciousness, which he calls the Chitti Shakti. And Shaktipat, he says, the transmission of spiritual energy or Shakti from the guru to the disciple, spiritual awakening by grace. So that's where I like to hang with it, spiritual awakening by grace.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because as the Shakti, so I surrender completely to the divine or God or the Shakti because I see them all as one, the Divine Mother. And that grace is what does the work. That grace is what does everything. So whether it's a guru or someone, transmitting, we're in the human form just surrendering to the grace. And it's the grace. I mean, period. It's the grace. The Shakti's the grace, the Kundalini's the grace, the the energy that works through us, the form of the energy, whatever it takes, it's all grace. So if somebody's Kundalini is being awakened in a Shaktipat session with me, that's grace. That's grace, period.
Yeah.
So to me, it's that the magical aspect of God's grace is what the Kundalini awakening and the Shaktipat is all about. And how that happens for different people can happen in different ways. Some people feel that energy descending from above through the crown chakra and awakening the body. Some people feel it actually awakening and arising from the root chakra. Some people can feel it in the heart chakra, doing a lot of activity in the heart chakra. So everybody has a different journey with it. But basically, you can receive Shaktipat from anyone who is fully immersed in that grace. Now, the gurus wouldn't agree with me on that. They would say that you need to, receive it from a fully enlightened master. I don't consider myself that. But I've been given this gift to be able to
Yeah.
give Shaktipat. And it did start with my guru because he gave me the grace to be able to give Shaktipat um, when I was with him. And at that time, I would just surrender to him fully. When I gave Shaktipat, I would just really bow at his feet. He would bless me with the feathers, and I would lay there until the Shakti moved me. So I wouldn't move until the Shakti moved me. And then she would just give the blessings through me. So that's just the way I've done it ever since. And even though I'm not in connection with him anymore, now I'm just with the Shakti and the grace, and I still do it the
Yeah.
same way. So, so for
Yeah.
me,
That's
it's full grace.
wow. And I love how you're speaking of that. I get a sense as you're saying you're just connected with the Shakti itself. Is there and I recognize, the connection between a guru and disciple, or whatever word you might use for someone who's sitting with a guru. Do you get a sense that at a deeper level that this is much more impersonal, that it is really just ultimately your surrender to God and that grace that has nothing to do with it coming through any specific person? And I do recognize, I do want to say at the same time, maybe I don't want to compound this, but I recognize that the guru is not only the human being that we're with, but I also have gotten the sense that that is also an impersonal, that I've heard that referred to before as the guru is the doorpost to consciousness itself, to
Hmm.
Shakti. And so I didn't know if that resonated with you or not.
Yes, yes to both, because yes. So I absolutely do feel like it is just a direct connection with the divine, and that the Shakti is just, it should be between the person and the divine. I absolutely believe that. Then there is the aspect of worshiping God through the guru also.
Yeah.
So for me, I've always been a very devotional person. I love devotion. I would lay at my guru's feet all day long if I could. Lay at
Wow.
my guru's feet. That's just always been my nature. So when I was put by the divine, put in more of a, I guess, teaching position, it's not as comfortable for me. It's
Hmm.
getting, I mean, it's better now, but for a while, I preferred to be the devotee. That was much. I just like that. I like that. I like being able to feel the divine through another being. So, so yes, there is the direct connection, and then yes, there is the divine aspect of God. The working through the guru principle. Um, And because I stress that so much in my teachings, that this is your personal connection with God, and it's all about you finding your truth within your own heart and finding your own divine connection. Uh, Unfortunately, I've seen some people's personalities take that in a different direction where they might start unrecognizing the power of the person that brought them to that space. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it can go in that other direction.
Yeah.
So I think there always has to be an appreciation and a love and an honoring of the being, of the form that the Shakti is working through to help you. And I think that if that isn't present, it's going to hinder your own growth. That's been my own journey with all of that. And so it's like that, you have to find that medium intermediary, I don't know, that place in the middle where um, you're not just completely giving your power to somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're also not by saying, "Oh, it's all within me." The Kundalini awakened because of me, because then it becomes me, 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 and it's not the healthy me. You know what I mean?
I feel like I've met that person. Yes.
Yeah.
I've spent
So
some time with that person without a doubt. Yes. I've been that person. Yes. I am that person. Yeah. Yeah.
So there has to be that in the middle place where you're like, I recognize you as a divine being, and I'm so grateful for the gifts that you've offered to me. And but also recognizing that the Shakti is within you and you are that power of God and that you are that grace. So yes.
Yeah, in fact, as I'm hearing you share this, the phrase is coming through, and I don't know if this applies in regards to this conversation. The phrase "God, Guru, and Self." In other words, that is all that is all a manifestation of that Shakti ultimately. That there
Mhm.
is that, and I know that in the Western world, I shouldn't say I know, but I've sensed that, and I've certainly feel like I've heard people say this, that recognizing the divine in oneself is maybe something that is possibly a little more foreign to the Western world, or is that something that maybe doesn't come as naturally, just due to cultural conditioning? And I don't know if this is a fair question, but
I think it's an absolutely fair question, although Jesus did say the kingdom of heaven dwells within.
yeah, yeah,
It was one of his main teachings. So I don't know
yeah.
how we missed that. But no, it's interesting. There's someone I've been doing sessions with he's Hindu, and he was just I think it's okay to share this, but he was telling me about a conversation he was having with someone they were having the discussion of whether God is within or God is without. And I thought
Yeah,
that was so interesting because I said, well, that's the whole basis of the Hindu tradition that, we go inward and we meditate. So
yeah.
obviously it's not just in the Western world that we're missing that.
That is so interesting. Yeah, and I have to wonder too if with globalization and everything else, if this particular way of looking at things in the Western world has found its way to India and found its way to the East, so to
There's
speak. And
that.
yeah, that
There's
might be an
that.
oversimplification on my part, but I've gotten that sense.
No, I think you're right. And there's definitely a lot of Christianity in India.
Yeah,
I think not to blame it all on Christianity, but there is a certain mindset that goes with those teachings, I think. So you're probably right. Um, yeah, anyway, it's very hard to tell people that have been raised in a strict Western religion that you are God, God dwells within.
yeah.
You are part of that original place of divinity and light. And we've really been taught that that's blasphemy. And then you go to hell if you're in blasphemy. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
oh yeah.
scary. That would be a pretty scary thought.
Yeah.
Muktananda talks about that in his books. He talks about how, don't listen to anybody who tells you you're a sinner. You're not a sinner. You're God. God dwells within you as you, he says. God dwells within you as you. And that's the truth. That is the truth. We are all God. And to me, that's just common sense. And so also with the Shakti or the Kundalini, when we're awakening the Kundalini energy, people also get afraid of the Kundalini because they think it's some outside force that's going to come into their body and do something, but it's not. It already dwells within us. It is the God force energy that dwells within us already. We're just enlivening it, awakening it, sparking it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's always there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you're speaking about that being within us ultimately. And I know that, like within, for instance, I don't know if this is the only way of looking at this, but I know like within Kashmir Shaivism, for instance, they speak about consciousness that, we humans are ultimately a contracted form of consciousness. And they have this entire list of these various aspects in which that consciousness gets contracted, our senses, for instance, just as an example. And there's all the things about, the human experience and the experience of being human that
Mhm.
ultimately that we are, but I love how you're speaking about that ultimately that is within us. And even if that is it's compared to all that is, or the consciousness, all that is the divine, that somehow we are some form of contracted consciousness.
Yeah. Yes. So in Kashmir Shaivism, what was your experience of Tantra and Kundalini? Because Baba
Yeah.
Muktananda was really into Kashmir Shaivism.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say again. I didn't
Baba
hear that.
Muktananda wasn't really into Kashmir Shaivism.
Yeah, that's interestingly enough, I know a little bit about him, but clearly not very much. I actually have studied some and read the books. There is a disciple of his, and he lives in Australia now. His name is Swami Shankarananda. And
Hmm.
he actually went to India after he met Ram Dass at a dinner party like in 1970. And evidently, him experiencing Ram Dass's consciousness, he felt moved to just drop everything. He was pursuing a PhD and left and went to India. And so he has often spoken about this in terms of, when you ask about Kashmir Shaivism and where Tantra falls in with that. And ultimately, I know that part of Kashmir Shaivism is also related to Advaita or non-duality, and so the actual experience of connecting with the divine, at least my understanding of this, and I don't necessarily know a lot about it, that connection with the divine really comes through uh, that tantric human experience, feeling the energy, connecting with it. Whereas I know, for instance, there's a lot of talk about non-duality, but it's more of what he refers to as a dryness. It's very theoretical, saying that we're all part of the same thing. But ultimately, a lot of it seems like it is more a philosophy. Whereas within Kashmir Shaivism, there is also the experience of Kundalini, the experience of that energy. And so
Hmm.
that's really one of the reasons why I have really gravitated towards teachers, that come from that particular lineage. And I realize there's a couple of and I understand that Baba Muktananda is ultimately one of the lineages that I understand that traces, back to him.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. And so you would probably really enjoy that book.
Yeah.
The book
Yeah,
that
I did,
you
and
read.
I'm not just saying it. I know it's very easy. Human beings sometimes we can just say, "Yeah, I definitely want to," but this is something I'm taking this as a sign that
Hmm.
it's time for me to do this, because it's been beautiful to. I know Ram Dass, and I really considered him my guru, and can still consider him my guru, although he always was very adamant about the fact that he is not and was not a guru, but ultimately
Hmm.
is a teacher.
He is
And I
though.
know there and I know there's that connection, Maharaji, in terms of, that
Hmm.
connection with his guru. But I know that my understanding is he spent quite a bit of time with Muktananda back in, I think it was 70 and 71, the
Oh,
second time that he went to India. And so I found myself really fascinated by listening to the stories that he told about that. And
mm,
I don't even remember how I found Swami Shankarananda. It was just, and there again, I don't think there are any accidents, but
yeah.
it's beautiful because he gives a weekly satsang, and so I always listen to that. And a lot of times he spends, kind of, they will do some chanting and things like that, and then he will spend quite a bit of time speaking about his experiences with Muktananda, and that how that ultimately shaped the being that he is today. And I think, if I understand correctly, he even started an ashram for Muktananda. Told him to go to Detroit, Michigan. I think it was in
Oh,
74,
mm,
73 or 74, and told him to actually start an ashram there. And so he
mm,
did that. And then I think he went with did Muktananda go on a couple of world tours, I believe, like
mhm,
major tours of the world, and I
mhm.
think he accompanied them. He accompanied him on one or both of those.
Yes, he was one of, well, he and Dion Yogi, I believe, were one of the first two that actually started giving Shaktipat in mass numbers.
Oh, wow.
Because
Yeah.
before that, it was believed, a guru would only give Shaktipat once or twice a week to their very devoted devotees who had been doing the practices for years. And then he just had the initiative, and I think Dhyan Yogi as well just had the initiative to just start giving it to anybody who wanted it.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
something shifted during that time period because it was just around the same time. So we got
Yeah.
really lucky because
Wow.
there's no way I would have been allowed to have Shaktipat, when I got it from where I was coming from.
Yeah.
So yeah, blessings abound. We're lucky these days. But yeah, so it to me it's just such a more alive, beautiful practice to see the energy in everything and experience everything as that. And oh, I don't know. The other does feel very dry to me. I like I'm looking at the trees out the window. I like looking at the trees and seeing them sparkle and shine with the energy of grace and aliveness and God. And just, it's everywhere. Everywhere you go, you can see it and feel it and experience it and touch it.
Oh yeah, and for me, the non-duality, there was also this sense of depersonalization. I don't know if I can say evidently I have trouble saying that word. I don't know why. Uh, but there is this, I get the sense that, and I certainly went through some of that, where there was this, when I was first introduced to that, even before I even knew of Muktananda at all, or anything about it. This is way before I became aware of Kashmir Shaivism. And while it really resonated with me to recognize that I sense that I'm connected with all people and all beings and everything that is, that there was definitely a point at which there was this dropping away of the personality, the self, and some of it I feel like I was predisposed because I was reading and listening to teachers who spoke about how that is part of the process.
Hmm.
And but there was really nothing about necessarily about the energy itself. It was just this almost theoretical, where and which I clearly respect, that we all are ultimately, that trying to think how to say this. Ram Dass would always say that we are basically, we are just God in drag. He would always say that we
I
ultimately,
love
at the
it.
end of the day, we're all just these packages, or
Hmm.
soul pods, I think he would call it. So for me, it probably was helpful just to get a sense of that, that I was not who I thought I was, that there was clearly something more to it that had nothing to do with me and my personality. But I also found that I did find that to be rather dry. There was a point at which there just wasn't. It was kind of a stopping point, And there was really no, and I think I sensed that what was missing was this connection to the energy, to actually feeling energy and recognizing that I was part of that and that was within me. Uh,
Mm.
and so it was more of really opening and being more connected to that and not getting so caught up in quote unquote being nothing, if that makes sense.
Because
And I'm sorry, I know that was a lot, but
no, it's beautiful. I've gone back and forth with it because there are beautiful aspects in all of the teachings. And I definitely like the idea of an empty mind,
yeah,
and that place, but as well, we are in this beautiful body. And I think that appreciating the body that we're in is also a lovely experience of God.
yeah, yeah.
Appreciating the touch and the feel and the all the openness that we can experience through that. But I've definitely gone like this with it, I definitely do this, and I think it's because it becomes mental if you try to become something.
Yes,
But like
yes,
you said, when
yes,
it's a natural dropping, like I've watched my personality and my ego drop away over the years.
yeah,
Still here, but I've
yes,
watched pieces of it releasing and because sometimes being painfully pulled away and watching myself become more free. But I don't think that you can try to do that because trying to do that creates more ego and more attachment.
yes, yes. Yeah,
And
and
that's why,
I remember, very early on thinking, I really do. I want to have ego death. I really do. I want to let go of all this nonsense that is me. And yeah, I mean that seemed very alluring at the time. Yeah.
and it does. It's funny because it sounds very alluring to the ego, but then the ego is what doesn't want to let go. So then we create this cycle that we keep ourselves in, right? So we can't get out of it
Yes.
because the ego wants
Yes.
that. I don't know what the ego wants, but not to downplay the ego, but it's just I think the personality itself has a hard time letting go of the personality itself.
Yes. Yes.
But being just in the practice of consciousness and of grace, you slowly watch the personality evolve into a higher state of oneness with the truth. And so it's not so much you're obviously trying to clear things and you're trying to heal and you're whatever, but you're also just what really it's grace. Grace is coming in and doing it for you, and you're just kind of watching it happen.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that too, because I was actually, as you said that, what was just the last few sentences, I was coming back to, there was this really, when you spoke about that earlier, that it really, really reached me and it really resonated. And I didn't even know that the conversation would lead to this, but yeah, I love that. And I know that, there is this, and I definitely went through that for a long period of time too, wanting to evolve, wanting to transform, wanting certain things to drop away, wanting to continue to evolve on this path, so to speak, only to find that, the harder, like you, and I feel like you were speaking to this too, the harder that I worked at it, there was more ego because then I was busy being the person trying to not do this or be this way. And that ultimately I have had a few of those moments where there's been that grace where suddenly I wake up and not so much that I'm asleep, but just there's this recognition of, oh wow, that is something that I struggled with and did for a long time. And it's
Mm.
not to say that I'm immune from that or that it won't ever happen again, but there was this sort of freedom, and there was just this emptiness where, and I don't say emptiness in a bad way, but there was just this, being me,
Mhm.
so to speak, and not, me as in the identity, but just, this manifestation of energy. And all of a sudden it was realizing that yeah, it's just like it's almost like, in a way, I don't know that I tried to get out of the way, because then there again it would be back in that vicious cycle. of trying to make something happen and trying to force evolution. But I've had a taste of that, I guess is what I would say to you. There's been some real surprises of some things that have been core struggles in my life that suddenly the weight of that has been lifted.
Mhm.
And I found that the less I try to think about it and the less I try to understand what happened and why it happened, because then I find myself going back into that old energy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that all of those moments of us trying and struggling are really fine because
Yes.
through that
Yes.
we're having so much recognition of what something looks like and how it's approaching us and what our patterns are and what our cycles are. And I think we see so much through that process. So,
Yeah.
and also just like we can't approach something until we recognize that it's there. So first there's that
Yeah.
beautiful recognition of, oh, I have this thing, whatever it is, I want enlightenment or I want to get rid of this or I want to do this. So first there's that recognition. And then there's the, oh my God, but how am I going to do this? And then we go through
Yes.
that whole struggle. And I think that allows for grace. So I think there's important aspects of every step of the journey.
Yes.
And then the grace happens. And I had one of those moments last week and I saw a direct effect of it. It was so clear to me that it had like, I was saying, "Wow, I don't feel the way I normally feel in this situation." I was clear, and I ran into someone within 5 minutes, completely out of the blue, that just resolved it. I mean, it was so beautiful.
Wow.
It wasn't just the energetic, which is enough. That's a miracle enough to say,
Yes.
"Wow." But then to have a physical manifestation as a result of that so quickly, that's the miracles and the grace that that blows me away. And for me, that's all, that's Shaktipat. All of that is Shaktipat. That's that divine grace that comes through and allows someone to see their divinity and their truth and start recognizing who they truly are and start recognizing what they want in life, where they want to go, who they want to be. And maybe first you wanna be this, right? And then you go, "Well, maybe that's not the biggest dream. Maybe I wanna be this." And then ultimately it does become, "Well, I really just wanna be the divine self that I am."
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it's a process, and that's why I work with people for long periods. And, for me, I'm not just a give Shakti-pot, walk away kind of person. I like to go through the whole journey with someone because we can start somewhere and years later we can be, in a completely different place. And it's like just assisting a soul through that journey of awakening. It's what I love. I love to be a part of it and help on the journey.
In some way, is it as if, or maybe it is that, the whereas I recognize, the transmission of Shaktipat, and there again, I don't understand or know much about this at all. It's very surface, it's very surface level. I've read a lot about it, heard a lot about it, but I don't know that that's knowing about it necessarily. Do you find that with people you work with, is that transmission possibly occurring all the time? I mean, I realize when you're working with someone in a session, and because I don't know what that looks like, I'm wondering if I get a sense as you were speaking about people that you work with, and I was just wondering if that energy is being transmitted constantly, even when they're not in front of you, so to speak.
Oh, with people I'm working with, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That's why it's an interesting I've had a couple interesting dilemmas where someone's kind of wishy-washy about whether they're working with me or not working with me. And I have to sometimes cut it off and say, you
Mm.
really need to make a decision because my energy is always, if we're working together, my energy is always there with you. So,
Ah, yeah.
I need to know if we are clearly working together or if we're not. Um, it seems a little harsh sometimes, but it is. It is that is part of the process. So, it's one reason why I don't do singular sessions anymore with people, and I only do, like a series of sessions and things like that because Yeah, the energy's always working. So there's always a part of me that's always or me or
Yeah.
my guides or God, whatever. There's always something that's there. That connection is always present. Um, I thought you were asking about just people in general that I meet, and no. That's
Yeah,
what
of course I wonder in that regard too. I mean, just that whole, I realize there's this, the whole human experience. We go out in the world and we interact with people, and I have to wonder in some ways if we are, and because of uh looking at this is that we are all ultimately, part of the divine, that energy is connecting us all. I have to wonder about that too in situations where we just happen to run into someone on the street or
mm,
something that seems more random. Is it possible that, that energy there again, that energy, there is that a conduit, whatever you might call it, or an exchange of energy that, that just happens, that is way beyond the human ability to communicate in language and, in physical cues, so to speak, that there's some of this that just is very impersonal.
yeah, that definitely happens. And I have recognized when that is available with someone. And in that case, I just open up the energy for it to
Yeah,
come. Because if there's an interest expressed or there's a feeling, I just open it and I say, okay, whatever's supposed to happen here, let that happen. Even if it's just that moment or if we reconnect later. But there are a lot of people who, especially in the circle where I am here, I almost feel like they're putting up a wall. Like they're a
mm,
little they have a little trepidation around me because most people know what I do. So I'm very careful about not bringing energy into a space where people wouldn't be open to it or welcoming it. It's a
yeah,
little weird for me, to have to do this um, just be loving, but not
yeah,
be, not really spread your love too widely if people aren't into it or wanting it. Yeah, that's been something I've been I'm better at it now because people who have freshly awakened Kundalini and they aren't really sure and they'll say, "Oh, this person got this or this person got that from me." And I always tell them, "Well, I'm really careful about, when I'm out in public."
yeah,
Obviously if God wants me to connect with someone, that will happen. But I don't just like try to throw my energy on anyone and I'm very cautious of how other people feel. Like I'm pretty good at knowing exactly how someone else feels. So
yeah,
I'll never
yeah,
push it beyond their wall or their limit or what they're but there have been some younger, people lately, maybe 18, 19, who have approached me. It just, shocked me. They're beautiful kids, but I had no idea that they would be interested in such things that, ask me, they'll just be fascinated and ask me all kinds of questions, and I love it.
yeah.
I love communing with, just that newly awakened, newly curious being, and it's beautiful. That's a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, and that the power of connection is as someone who, if there was any awakening there again, I can't really know for sure. It sure felt like it, and it sure felt like my world kind of turned upside down at some point. And there was this whole new orientation to life, so to speak, that it really for me happened in isolation. I didn't have, a community of people, and I'm not saying that in a I'm not saying that and it's a negative in any way. I'm definitely open to the fact that it happened the way it was supposed to happen. But I definitely remember spending a lot of time wondering, what was wrong with me. But I there was but I'll also say to you at the same time there was also this sense of reassurance that I couldn't put my finger on, that there was this energy that was moving. In fact, I was going, I don't know that I've ever brought this up to you. I don't know that I don't speak about it a lot, but before I even really knew about Kundalini energy, I think I had met or had been at a group of, with people, a meditation group, and somebody brought it up. this has probably been 12, 13 years ago. And the only, and I can say this, this is the only direct experience I've ever had of feeling that energy that I'm aware of. Now, I'm also open to the fact that maybe I have felt this and I didn't know, so to speak. I
Mm,
was awakened out of a dream, and I felt this at the base of my spine. There was this, really sharp kind of, I don't even know really what to call it, but it was this unbelievable tightening
mm,
where I guess where you might call where my sacral chakra is.
mhm,
And the odd part about it is I just barely started scratching the surface with studying Hinduism. And I remember as I felt that tightening,
mhm.
I literally, and it freaked me out. I mean, I woke up, I heard Om. I mean, I literally heard, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's, I try not to think about it or try
Mm,
to analyze it. But I mean, it was clearly, and what's weird is I'm sure I had heard, prior to that, I'd heard, the tone of Om, expressed in different ways. Uh, but I mean, it was a very visceral bodily experience. And I felt like, who am I going to tell about this? Who am I going to? And I do remember going there a little bit with the meditation group, the people I was sitting with, in a mindfulness meditation group,
mm.
and had just gotten exposed to non-duality. And I thought, these people will be open. I mean, I think they'll. I very quickly found out that everybody started looking at me really weird. And I was like, okay, I think I've said all I'm going to say for now. I'm gonna have to walk this one out on my own, so to speak. Even though I know none of us are an island, but it's that whole thing. It's that belief that somehow I'm on my own.
Yes. Oh, I do know that experience. I do know that experience. No, not that I mean, the that's first of all, let's just say that's an amazing experience, and it does definitely sound like your kundalini was sparked there, because that's that's a very divine experience. When was that?
This would have been summer of 2012. So I guess, yeah,
Oh,
about 12 years ago.
wow.
The odd thing about it was, and there again, I don't, I try not to analyze this or understand it, but I had been with a group of people and they were serving some kind of herbal tea. And I don't remember, and I know it was not hallucinogens or anything
Mhm.
like that, but it was just, there was some kind of herbal tea and I don't remember the name of it. And
I was gonna
I
say,
had had
everybody's gonna
that.
ask what that tea is.
Because yeah, it's very interesting. But they were just serving this as it was just something exotic and different. And I remember that it was definitely a very interesting, herbal taste, so to speak. And I basically didn't feel anything at all. This was like earlier that day, like in the morning,
Mhm.
and literally felt no effects whatsoever. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say for sure that it had anything to do with the herbs in that tea. I have no idea. But it is I find it interesting that I did consume that much, much earlier in the day and felt quote unquote normal. There wasn't anything that was really different. And I went to sleep and everything felt very the way it always did, so to speak.
You woke up in the middle of the night?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it was that same night. And
And nothing
it
happened, like, earlier in the week or within a
uh-uh.
couple of weeks? Okay.
I don't think so, oddly enough. Now, the only thing I will say is, I mean, I was really, really, this was where I was really opening myself up to, just, understanding, energy in this way, universal energy,
Mhm.
and, diving into, I mean, when I practiced Zen and mindfulness, I mean, I didn't really get into a lot of the metaphysical aspects of these things. And so I was starting to hang around people that I was starting to learn a little bit about this. But when I brought this back to the small group that I had been sitting with for quite a while, it was there was that was definitely not that was not resonating. And yeah,
Mm.
so I just and I really I don't want to say I don't think I forgot about it there, but I can truly say that that is the only in terms of spirituality, the spiritual experience experiencing the divine. I mean, that has been really my only actual direct experience of that. Now, I'm also open to say that I'm sure that I have felt contracted forms of that energy. I mean, I feel like when I connect with people, when I have moments, where I feel very open and I'm feeling certain energies. So I shouldn't say that was the only direct experience, but it was definitely the one that really caught my attention, that I didn't have any context for it.
It's beautiful. That's a beautiful experience. So, yeah, it's hard to know, right, what sparked it, but the divine always works in mysterious ways, and that's
Yes.
that's the big thing. That's the thing about the Shakti, about the Kundalini. There's no way of knowing when something's going to happen, how something's going to happen. You could receive Shaktipat and feel something a year later.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just don't know the way the ways of the divine. That's why it's so beautiful and ancient. It's like that ancient wisdom. We just don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah.
I love not knowing. I love being in the space of not knowing. And I think a lot of us on the spiritual path get tripped up on having to know and having to have all the answers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Lots and lots of books, lots of reading. Yeah, a lot of that searching for, trying to find that, to know whatever it is that needs to be known. And I'm finding that there's much less of that these days. But then again, I feel like that's, it's not been a formal program, or I didn't wake up one day and say, all right, I'm gonna try. I think that has been grace as well, just that, because that's always been so much a part of my personality trait
Hmm.
personality traits is I've always been someone that's really intellectualized everything. Philosophy was always something that has really resonated. I don't have a lot of use for it anymore. It doesn't. It just kind of feels like sort of an exercise that really leads. No, it's just more thinking. And it just, yeah, it just, for what, and then it's all fine. I mean, I definitely have respect, for philosophy and for people who study that and pursue that. And there again, maybe that's just part of the dance, so to speak. Maybe that's just part of the journey. But I will tell you that it's a lot. I can live a lot more lightly, not needing to know. Yeah. And I feel like that's really where the magic happens.
I
Yeah.
do too. And I've come to that space very much with the Kundalini and the Shakti because I see so many different things and there's just so many moments to say I don't know. But a lot of times people want to know, well, this happened to me. What does that mean? I can't tell you how many emails I get. And I love hearing people's experiences.
Yeah.
But then at the end is always, what does it mean? I don't know what it means. It means your Kundalini's awake and active and working for you and just surrender. That's the best answer I could give.
Yeah.
My head moved in this way, or I got this breathing, or I had this dream. What does it mean? I don't know what it means. It means God's working
Yeah.
with you and bringing you into your highest evolution of light and surrender to that. Because I don't have a need to know with myself, so I don't really get into needing to know for other people.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe is it possible that that's maybe the deepest part of this journey is recognizing that there really is the knowing doesn't really lead to anything anyway. That it's yeah, and I definitely respect the human pursuit of knowledge.
Mhm.
I definitely realize we live in a certain way that has to do with we've benefited in some ways from that, but I also wonder too if there has been a lot of opportunity to be more open and not need to have the answers. And I'm really wondering if that's been maybe a part of the human experience that gets overlooked now. That just there's such a focus on doing, whereas there I sense that a lot of the mystery is in being.
Yeah. Being and seeing what appears before you. What happens next?
Yeah.
In every moment. What happens next? What happens next? In every moment.
Yes. Yes.
Because if we're caught up in the needing to know what happened before, we're going to miss what's happening now.
Yes. Yes, I definitely, and that's why I was mentioning to you, before we started recording, the return to the Zen cushion after many years of not doing that. And, after, really getting caught up and going into moving in more esoteric directions. And there was some sense of losing touch with the fact that all of these things, the experience of the divine, all of that that I get a sense that it's just it happens in this moment, and then the next moment happens, and this previous moment is, if we're still living in that, it's just in our psychological memory, and that we're just trying to hold on to. And I realize it's easier said than done. I mean, I'd love to spend the rest of my life just moment to moment, and never, real necessarily being burdened with the memories of the past, and not and trying to live in a way that that has no context with what was come before. And I'm not there. I know that. I don't know necessarily that I ever will be there, but it's something that it resonates.
But again, that's where grace comes in, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Because
Yes.
then we realize that this moment is the same as the last moment and the last moment, and there really is only one moment, and all moments exist within this one moment right here and now. And then
Yes.
one day we realize that we're sitting in the only moment that ever existed. How did that
And
happen?
yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like I've heard this somewhere before, that, in terms of the divine, that there is no time, that ultimately the past, the future, time itself. And there again, I'm not speaking from a place of knowing, but just I feel like I have heard this and read this, that ultimately, uh, that that is something that is really a human construct, and that once we get started thinking and identifying with being somebody, then suddenly there is time.
Mhm.
And there again, what I love about that is, I just said that, and I don't really understand how any of that works, but I felt it. I've definitely experienced being a human, being busy, thinking that I'm somebody trying to
Mhm.
be somebody doing something, and there's definitely time.
And there
Yeah.
is. I have to have my kids to music school on time, or they will get in
Yes.
trouble.
Yeah.
That's hard with a mom who's kind of, out there in the moment most of the time, but I'm pretty good at
Yeah.
it. Lately, I'm getting better at
Yeah.
it.
And I wonder too, in some ways, that's the practice of being, divinely human, being able to actually still inhabit your consciousness the way you do, but still also honoring the human part that, needs to be somewhere at a certain time, and dealing with the human stuff.
Yeah, and get a certain amount of things done within a certain time period.
Yes. Yes.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I've, given up a little bit on trying to figure it out. Again, I go back into that not knowing phase, and I recognize when my mind is trying to figure something out, that it's time to keep the mind out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, if we're trying to figure out how time works and how there can only be one moment, okay, mind, it's time for you to take a break. We don't need to know. That's when I just go into this expansive mode. And I do this in sessions with people too, because there can be moments of really not understanding what's happening in the session, because so many things are going on so many different levels. And if I try to figure it out, it's not going to be healthy. So there's a lot
Mm,
of times where if I find my mind starting to try to figure something out in session with someone, I just automatically expand
yeah.
into consciousness. And then you have to go, and it's not a comfortable place the first time you try it, but you have to go and do a complete unknown, a complete not
Yes.
knowing. And that's
Yes.
God. To me, that's God. That's just expanding the mind and consciousness completely into God. So there are no thoughts about the situation. You're just observing. You're just seeing it. You're just watching it. And that can be really uncomfortable, especially when you're working with someone else's consciousness that's not familiar to you.
Huh.
So there
Yeah.
are a lot of different things coming in that you aren't used to having in your consciousness, because when I work with someone, I pretty much become one with them. So which on the energetic level is already present, but on the personality level, obviously we have so many different ideas and thoughts and constructs. So
Yeah, I love that orientation of, like, what they refer to as planes of consciousness, like, the astral plane, the various, and it's almost like, in a way, that feels to me like it does really speak about the experience of being human, that there is the really visceral part, and then you have the energetic layer, which, kind of exists on top of that. And but it's all, all those layers ultimately are all, occurring at the same time. In other words,
Right.
those experiences are all happening at the same time. And there again, that's not spoken from a place of knowing either, but
Well, you must know something. You're speaking.
I think what this
Must be
is
something
this
there.
is I think what this is actually remnants of many years of trying to I wanted to know everything about all of this. And I think what's happened is there's just little bits and pieces that still are floating around in my human consciousness.
So what's
Not
the difference between that and just tuning into the divine and letting the divine speak? Have you identified if there's a difference in what's actually happening when you're speaking?
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, I think it is, there again, I don't even want to get myself into this. Well, I've come part of the way, or there. I will tell you that the more I have gone on in this journey, uh, having these kind of conversations, even like the one that we're having right now, would have been very difficult for me uh,
Mhm.
3 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, I mean, and as of right now, it's like, for instance, I'll admit there are still, the human stuff. There is still the kind of like not sure if I can just completely open up. And it's not that I'm trying to keep anything from anybody, but it's, can I really just be in the flow of a
Yeah.
conversation and let whatever is said get said, and whatever the experiences are. And for me, that has been an incredible feeling of grace. I mean, just to be able to be with people and actually and recognize that you can't necessarily complete, like you were saying, you can't necessarily open up completely. It's on a case by case basis, so to
Mhm.
speak, or it's
Mhm.
contextual maybe.
Mhm.
But yeah, without a doubt, I mean, and I think what's happened more and more is I've gotten more comfortable with, even if I'm talking to someone who I don't know if they're quote unquote there, so to speak, that I can just, I feel more free to just be who I am. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but
Yeah.
I think this has really just been about all the struggles about what I think about me. There's all the self-limiting beliefs about, what that I think I'm weird, or that there's something that's off-putting to people, or all that personality driven stuff. And I'm finding that stuff that has fallen away a lot. And it's not to say that once in a while I don't, I don't wonder if maybe that person really thinks I'm weird. Or it's almost like, in a
Yeah.
way, though, I think there's been more of an okayness with being weird. And I don't even know
Yeah.
if, yeah, I feel like it's okay at some point. And I'm not trying to force that on anybody, but it's just this being okay with whatever it is that I am, because I'm just being. And it really
Right.
doesn't have anything to do with Jeff Chrisman. It's just this is the body in which I've been taking this ride on, so to speak. And this is the name that I was given. So yeah, but I don't have to be completely defined by it.
That sounds like a pretty enlightened perspective.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been I started to say it's a work in progress, but that's also old language. That's kind of out the window, because there is work only. I think at some point the work is just kind of exhausting oneself, and at some point I love when you speak about that, about grace. And I
Mhm.
wonder if maybe the work is up somehow as preparation for finally being open to receive grace. That it's been there all
Yes.
along, but maybe it's we have to let go of certain things and push certain things, and do the work, so to speak. I notice I hear that a lot in spiritual communities, do the work.
Mhm.
And I bet I get a sense that that's part of it, isn't it? That's part of the journey, that I don't want to discount that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my whole life is doing the work.
Yeah.
It really is. But, I guess that's just perspective on what that actually means, doing the work. And I
Yeah.
should say too, when I am out communicating with people that I don't necessarily think would want to receive the Shakti energy,
Yeah.
I'm still, and especially in a difficult situation where I really know it's going to be hard, uh, I still surrender to the divine. I will literally sit in my car and close my eyes and say, all right, God, I really don't know what to talk about here, and I don't know what is the best way to communicate with people. So just take me over. Take my ego
Yes.
completely out of it and just speak through me. And so even
Yes.
in those situations where I'm not particularly, trying to transmit energy, I'm still asking the divine to speak through me and to act through me in the highest and best way for whoever I'm communicating with.
Yes, I that definitely resonates. That absolutely resonates. Absolutely. I wonder if in some ways what we humans sometimes call being ourselves, I wonder if maybe that's what you're speaking of, but it's not really about a personality or an identity being ourselves, but it's being what we ultimately are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that can communicate with everything and everyone because everyone is the divine. If they don't particularly want the Shakti energy, that's okay, but they're still divine.
Yes.
And we still can communicate on some level. Like that's always my goal to find where whatever that level is that we can. There's a little groundhog out my window.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, so we can always communicate on some level. I just, my personality might not know what the best way is to do that. So that's when I surrender and ask for help.
Yeah, and that I really get a sense that is a beautiful thing, that trust. My maybe I use the word trust, faith, whatever that might be, but or both. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I'm just so appreciative, and I have to tell you, as we've come to this point, I wanted to tell you, I don't know that I ever asked you before, but when you've spoken about Shaktipat in previous conversations, I don't know that you ever spoke about Muktananda, and I don't know
Oh,
anything, but I was wondering, and for some reason I didn't ask because I wasn't sure if it was, if it was something that it was the time for me to ask you, but I really got a sense that that connection with Muktananda. I mean, it's nothing from a rational standpoint, but I got this kind of like felt sense of that, and I didn't need to be right, and it wasn't like I was
yeah.
trying to guess, but it certainly that comes through in some way. Yeah,
Very strong connection. Now, I'm very careful. Probably the reason is because, and I was surprised when I heard myself say it today because you have to be very careful about talking about Muktananda because Siddha Yoga, who is the group that he started,
yeah.
they um they have police out there who are watching. You have to
Oh,
be very careful. They don't want anyone claiming that they're doing his work or
oh,
that they're a successor or that they're so like I can't have any of his photos that's from their group in my
oh.
videos. They've contacted me before.
Interesting,
Yeah, so I have to be very
interesting.
careful about what I say in that context. That's probably why you've never heard me mention him.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's weird because I also there was this sense of, maybe I'm not supposed to ask, and I had no way to know, it just, but that's kind of what, and I was fine. I didn't necessarily, there wasn't a necessarily an absolute need to know, but there was
Mhm.
certainly there was something that was moving there energetically. So yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, what I'm not allowed to say, but I can say that he works with me, that's my experience, that he's with me,
yeah.
works with me. People have seen both he and Nityananda in the room when I give Shaktipat. People that have never seen the
Wow,
photos before will say, "Oh, I saw these 2 men in the room. They were Indian." And then they'll see their pictures and say, "Oh, that's them," so
wow.
happened more
I
than
love
once.
that. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's a strong energy, and a lot of times when people come to me, we'll start talking, and then we realize that we have that connection.
Yeah.
I think he sends people to me,
Wow.
um,
Wow.
in a energetically.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't talk about it very often.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And as always, it's been great to be in this space with you. Uh, and I find that is, my experience of the divine is just being able to have a conversation that have no, just literally have no way to know where it's going to go, and to just somehow allow that grace of staying out of the way and not needing to be prepared for it. Yeah. To me, that's a huge thing. I definitely don't take that for granted.
I love it. I love that way of being. Because again, it's that not knowing, it's just waiting, the spontaneousness of each moment. How's it going to unfold? which I love living that way.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. I have
Thank
this is as
you.
always is incredibly nourishing, and I'm so thankful.
Also, I've changed my Shaktipat schedule around a little bit, and I'm starting
Oh,
to do Shaktipats once a month on the full moon, like a
oh,
2-hour
wow,
session online where I'm going to be hopefully chanting. My son is helping me hook up a system so I can chant because I haven't been able to do that on.
wow,
So that's
yeah.
Tuesday, on the 17th.
Oh, wow. What
Next
time?
month, 6 o'clock Eastern time.
Oh, okay,
I'm planning
cool.
on doing, like, the first hour and a half chanting and then individual blessings or group blessings depending on who's there, and then
Yeah,
maybe last half hour questions and sharing, or if nobody has any questions, maybe end it at an hour and a half. This will be the
yeah.
first one doing it in this format, so I'm going to
Oh,
make.
wow. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely, absolutely. And I love that connection with the full moon as well. Yeah,
Yes, me too, so that'll be fun.
yeah. Well, thanks so much. It's been great talking with you
Yeah.
again.
Jai Ma.